everyone. I'm going to continue on the theme of scaling. We're not quite at the same scale as Uber, but one thing that I've always found interesting and unfortunate is that as companies get bigger and they have more money, more resources, more ability to invest in the employee experience, they tend to become worse places to work, and employees tend to be less engaged over time. And so that's something that we're absolutely terrified of, and have spent a lot of time thinking about how we can continue to invest in our employees, continue to invest in culture, continue to have our company feel small even as we get bigger. Now we're about 7.5 years in. We have about 1,500 employees. And I'll talk about some of the things that that we do to really invest in culture. None of it's rocket science, but it's something that most companies are not thinking about, and hopefully it sparks some ideas that might be relevant to each of your organizations. But like Rachel, first going to take a trip back in time. This is our first homepage that I designed in PowerPoint back in 2010, because none of us on the team were technical. And we bootstrapped the business. It was me and 3 classmates. We launched out of our apartments while we were in business school. We were full-time students, didn't have an office, and really spent money on 3 things. One was hiring a firm that could actually build this website, since none of us could. Second was our initial set of inventory that we had to pre-purchase. And the third was hiring a publicist to try to get some positive PR. We didn't have any employees, and we didn't think we needed them. At the time, there weren't many examples of consumer brands that had launched and scaled really quickly, and so we thought we'd be selling 1 or 2 pairs of glasses a day. A joke that, if nothing else, my mom would buy 100 pairs to make us feel good. And so we launched our business, and through our PR efforts, we were able to get these great features in GQ and Vogue the week we launched, and things just kind of took off like a rocket ship, where we were getting hundreds of orders a day, ran out of inventory almost immediately, had a wait list of 20,000 customers, had an inbox just full of emails, and our cell phones, which were the customer service line, were just ringing off the hook. And so we quickly realized we probably need to hire a few people. And we had interviewed a few folks from Craigslist a couple weeks earlier, but we hadn't pulled the trigger on hiring any of them because we were watching every penny. And once we were inundated with orders, we kind of looked through the folks that we had liked during that interview process, and started giving them a call. This is Colleen. She was our second employee. We gave her a call. It was a Thursday night at 10 p.m. Told her, congratulations, you got the job. She was super excited, and we asked her if she could start immediately, and she said yes. Does that mean next week? And we said, no, it means tomorrow at 8 a.m. So 10 hours later, she was in our office, but our office was actually my co-founder Neil's apartment, which also doubled as our store here, where we had customers in. And so Colleen had just graduated from Cornell and was living with her parents. She had to convince her dad that she wasn't going to get axe murdered by going to someone's apartment that first day. And her onboarding that day consisted of this one sentence. If you don't know the answer to something, ask one of us, but we probably don't know the answer either. And at 8:05, we had her on phones with customers, responding to emails, and was just kind of thrown into the fire. Fast forward 7.5 years, now we have over 60 retail locations across the country. We have 2 corporate offices. We have an optical lab where we're manufacturing glasses, and around 1,500 employees. And I think we've come a long way since those early days. And I'll talk about kind of some of the things that we do to invest in onboarding and the company culture from there. So the first thing that we realize is that details matter, and really setting the tone of the employee experience from day one is critically important, and making people feel special from the very first moment that they interact with your organization. And so now when people join, on their desk, we have this welcome packet that includes kind of helpful tools like an office map and laying out how to navigate the office, but also include a copy of Dharma Bums. The name Warby Parker came from 2 early Jack Kerouac characters, and so want to bring kind of some of that heritage into the experience from day one. We have a style guide that talks about all the elements of our brand, and just kind of some fun, helpful tools for new employees. We force everyone to stand in front of the company and introduce themselves and tell us a fun fact. And those fun facts have ranged from someone had held Michael Jackson's baby to a 5-foot-tall woman who announced that she had the colon the size of a 6-foot-tall man. And these are really just designed to help create conversations now that we have a few hundred people in our office. When they introduce themselves to the whole company and they give a fun fact, it's an opportunity just to create a conversation and have an icebreaker. And so if someone sees that woman in the office and says, "Oh, well, aren't you that woman with the huge colon?" It's just an opportunity for people to start talking and get to know each other from day one. We also are big helium consumers and designed these balloons. It's nice to meet you. It's a steak with a pair of glasses on it that we hang on people's desks on their first day. Again, it's a big office. It's an open office. If you see one of these balloons and you've been there for a while, you should go up and introduce yourself to that new employee. And again, creates this welcoming environment for everyone that starts. And then the onboarding process itself, the new hire orientation, is something that we take really seriously. And it's not something that some companies outsource that or have junior employees lead the onboarding. We think it's really important that the most senior people in the company are involved in that new hire orientation process, including me and my co-founder, Neil. Here is Neil leading a session with a bunch of new employees, talking about our core values, and even talking about our board and governance structure and why we started the company. Next, we've just learned that communication is everything, and you can't repeat yourself too many times. So things that seem obvious to you, you should repeat them until your mouth is getting numb, and then keep repeating them because they help focus the organization. Here is sort of a grainy image of our first office. This was our all-hands meeting at the time. We were really in one room, and kind of everyone knew what was going on in the company at all times because they could hear every conversation. We still had a weekly all-hands meeting, and I think a lot of young companies do. But I think it's ironic that as companies get bigger, they tend to communicate across the entire company less frequently instead of more frequently. So for us, we still lead a weekly all-hands meeting. It's Wednesdays at 8:30. So Neil and I will stand up in front of the company. We'll call up department heads or people from different parts of the organization to talk about new developments or just themes that we want to get across, company-wide priorities, strategic milestones that we want everyone to be aware of. We have folks crowd around. We have a corporate office in Nashville, so we'll record this meeting, and the Nashville office watches it in full. Now that we also have store employees and employees in our optical lab, we record something called a weekly briefing. So this is me or Neil recording something that lasts between 3 and 5 minutes, which is really just a highlight reel from that all-hands meeting. Again, it's a way for us to convey key messages to everyone in the company on a weekly basis, and also just make it feel like a smaller, tight-knit company. We also created something called Warby Weekly. That's an email that we'll send out that has a calendar of company events, goes into a little more detail around new product launches, new features that we're introducing. And also just are huge believers that communication needs to flow both ways. And one of the other things that big companies fall victim to is that the decision makers tend to move farther and farther away from the customers and data. And so Neil and I will still take shifts on phones, talking to customers, and we've created something called Customer Connection, where we have senior leaders from throughout the company and from different departments take shifts in our retail stores, actually selling glasses and answering customer emails and phones. Getting into the Halloweenies here, also just think that it's really important to continue to have fun as companies get bigger. Sometimes that element tends to disappear from the early startup days, and just think it's really important to find opportunities to celebrate with your teams around big milestones, wins, and celebrating your values. So here are a couple images from recent Halloween outing. On the right here, you have Freddie Mercury, Frida Kahlo, and some others. And then here you have I was an inbred cat. It was a cat inside of a piece of bread. And Neil was Robin Hood, so Batman's sidekick in a hoodie. And there's something that's just really disarming about seeing the most senior people in the company in spandex looking ridiculous. That again creates those cohesive bonds and just lets people have fun that have been working really hard. Going back to the balloon theme, when people hit a certain milestone, if they've been at the company for a certain number of years, we'll hang a balloon on their desk. Again, just another reason to celebrate, another reason for people to create conversations around the office. And so you'll see a bunch of balloons hanging in our airspace if you ever come visit us. And then for kind of bigger milestones, try to find other opportunities to celebrate with the team. When we turned 5, we threw ourselves a half-decade parade, found the shortest street in New York, and we actually hired a marching band, had our whole team out there, and threw ourselves a mini parade. Got the whole team involved, just a lot of fun. When we hit 1,000 employees, we had this big unveiling where we wrote down, we had this banner printed that listed every employee in the order that they were hired at the company, and then had some wallpaper where people could find their name and sign their name. And again, just finding these moments in time that either mark a passage of time or a passage of a certain amount of scale, and using those opportunities to celebrate as a team. And then also find opportunities to really celebrate our values. So the blue-footed booby is sort of an unofficial mascot for our team, and we've created the Blue-Footed Booby Award, where employees can nominate any of their colleagues for going above and beyond exemplifying one of our core values. And then on a monthly basis, we select 3 winners, and they get their choice of a number of prizes, and then that are roughly a few $100s in value. And then on a quarterly basis, we'll select an overall winner, and they get to choose any city that we have a presence in, and we'll fly them there. They can meet the team that's located there, but then it's also just a vacation for them. And we tend to get a few hundred nominees per month of people just going above and beyond, celebrating our values as a company. As we've gotten bigger, just have had more cross-functional teams. Also wanted to create something similar on a team basis. So we created what we call Breakfast of Champions, where you can nominate cross-functional teams, and they get just a big breakfast to celebrate. Then, for us, the number one reason that we hear people want to work for us is because of our social mission and the fact that we're a for-profit business that's also focused on doing good in the world. So I think it's really important to connect the work that goes on every day in the office, whether it's an accountant or back office engineer or someone working on supply chain, or a graphic designer, with how their work in the office connects back to our overall mission. And so for us, we have a buy a pair, give a pair program where for every pair of glasses we sell, we work with nonprofits to distribute a pair of glasses to someone in need. And most of these efforts are in the developing world. And so for everyone who's been at the company for 3 years, we'll fly them somewhere in the world. And we group them into a handful of trips per year. And they'll go out, they'll meet our nonprofit partners, they'll go out in the field, they'll actually administer exams, they'll meet some of the people that are receiving glasses through this program. And it also gives them an opportunity to bond and hang out with people from all different departments across the organization. And here just some photos from some recent trips. And it costs us a couple $1,000s per employee to do this, but we found that the experience has been transformative for a number of people on the team. We've had a lot of people that have had to get a passport. It's their first time ever leaving the country, and then they'll go out into rural Guatemala and talk to someone who didn't know that glasses existed and put glasses on their face, and it just becomes this incredibly powerful experience that goes far beyond what giving them a cash bonus of the equivalent cost, the impact that would have had. And so would encourage all of you to think about kind of your own missions and what's most important to your employees, and thinking about unique opportunities to reward employees above and beyond just cash compensation. We also started a program called Pupils Project here in New York and in Baltimore, where we're going into schools in low-income areas in conjunction with the city of New York and in Baltimore, and having a local opportunity. We give all of our employees the chance to volunteer, and we give them a couple of paid volunteer days to go into these schools and do some of this work firsthand on a more regular basis. And as we've scaled, we've also tried to think about how can we get our teams involved in more local efforts. So we were about to open a store in Houston the week that Hurricane Harvey hit. Our store was actually fine. It was in an area that was not damaged at all, but it still felt weird for us to have kind of a grand opening celebration. We'd already hired our team there. And so instead of opening that store, we paid for that team to volunteer for a month in local organizations, and then we donated 5% of all sales from Texas customers for the month of October to Hurricane Harvey relief. And it also have opportunities for every store. If they hit certain targets, they'll get a few $100s that they can donate to a local organization. And so, again, kind of getting our entire team involved in some of these do-good efforts has been fun and very much appreciated. We also look for opportunities just to get people engaged outside of their core role in just kind of fun, creative exercises. So we have hackathons like a lot of companies. We have a fairly large engineering and product team, but we also have a lot of people on our team that are outside of those roles, and we encourage them to get involved in hackathons as well. So really anyone in the company can get involved in these efforts. We also launched something we called WarbyCon, which is an internal conference where people can teach through kind of TED-style presentations anything that they want to talk about. So here's Tim, who's passionate about pop music and the fact that it all sounds the same. Kind of went through the history of pop music and how many of the beats are kind of come from the same person or the same couple people. We had someone go through the history of gin and tonics. And then other people that are providing content that's much more relevant to our business, but really kind of anything that's interesting, engaging is fair game. And then we also involve employees in external brand activities, so have some of our employees as models on our website. We include them in external Instagrams, created a fun kind of Facebook video show called Occupations. That's all employee actors and actresses. And finally, like with everything that you guys would do for your customers or with business metrics, would encourage you to just think about investing in the employee experience in an agile way. So just learn, grow, repeat. We have opportunities for employees to provide feedback on a weekly, monthly, biannual basis, and a lot of the questions that we ask are about the employee experience. And just as we've scaled, recognize that what we get asked about by investors and our board tend to be around kind of business results, but those things are actually kind of lagging indicators and the result of work that your team has done in the past. And investing in your team and keeping your employees engaged is really the best way to create those future business results. And so something that would encourage you to really think about, and especially think about as you get bigger and continue to scale.